It seems to me, first of all, from what I understand from doctors, that's really rare. If it's a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try to shut that whole thing down.
And when it comes to establishing your worldview, I was curious, what newspapers and magazines did you regularly read before you were tapped for this to stay informed and to understand the world?
I've read most of them, again, with a great appreciation for the press, for the media.
Like what one specifically? I'm curious that you...
all of them, any of them that have...
Can demonic spirits attach themselves to inanimate objects? The answer is yes.
Welcome to Twat Waffle of the Week.
Quote, I am here to swim. End quote. Words spoken by Leah Thomas in a recent Sports Illustrated interview. As long as Leah is within the accepted and current NCAA guidelines, she should be allowed to compete. End of story. I don't know what else to say. For what it's worth, Leah has my support. And yes, I'm aware I am biased as a lesbian, and a lesbian with numerous transgender friends, both male to female and female to male. So welcome to episode 7 of TWATs. The only site news for this week, I have added Podbean. I'm still tweaking the presentation, so please bear with me. So, this strange story comes to us via the Seattle Times. Actually, it's been about the only story I can find. At least, legitimate story. Quote,
Former Washington State Representative Matt Shea, the far-right Republican who was found by a House-commissioned investigation to have planned and participated in domestic terrorism, is in a small town in Poland with more than 60 Ukrainian children trying to facilitate their adoption in America. Shea has said his group helped rescue 62 children and their 2 adult caregivers from an orphanage in Mariupol, the city in southeastern Ukraine that has been bombarded by Russian forces. But international agencies say, with the chaos and confusion of war, now is not an appropriate time for international adoptions from Ukraine. And Shea's presence and lack of information surrounding the American group he is with has raised concerns among some residents of Kazimierz Dolny, the small Polish town where the children are staying at a hotel/guest house.
end quote. There is a shit ton of minutiae built into the story, but the biggest red flag, when Shea was asked what he was doing with the children, he told the aide to the mayor of Kazimierz Dolny, Weronika Zarnicka, it was, quote, none of her business, end quote. A second red flag, the Texas group called Loving Families and Homes for Orphans. He's also called the group Loving Homes and Families for Orphans, doesn't seem to exist. Quote,
The group, based in Fort Worth, registered with the Texas Secretary of State in 2018. No such group is registered as an adoption agency with the Texas Department of Health and Human Services. The group is also not registered with the Inter-County Adoption Accreditation and Maintenance Entity, the group that oversees American agencies involved in international adoptions.
end quote. there's way too many flags in this story, and it's not even taking into account Shay's past. I'm very curious as to the resolution that may come about.
And now for the crazies. And I'll say this, they have been royally busy this week. Many moons ago, one of my primary tropes concerned the QOP's attempt to overturn established rights laid down by our Constitution, whether directly or via amendment. We hear of their belittling attitude towards LGBT issues and people of color, towards women, especially concerning health care, for example, abortion and contraception, and the right to vote. The QOP just doesn't care for them. Their hatred towards women and children, I'll throw that in there, and people of different ethnicities is appalling. So, now enter Mike Braun.
When it comes to issues, you can't have it both ways. When you want that diversity to shine within our federal system, there are going to be rules and proceedings. They're going to be out of sync with maybe what other states would do. It's the beauty of the system, and that's where the differences among points of view in our 50 states ought to express themselves. And I'm not saying that rule would apply in general, depending on the topic, but it should mostly be in general, because it's hard to have it on issues that you just are interested in when you deny it for others with a different point of view.
So you would be okay with the Supreme Court leaving the question of interracial marriage to the states?
Yes, I think that that's something that if you're not wanting the Supreme Court to weigh in on issues like that, you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too. I think that's hypocritical.
Braun has since walked back his comment, but as noted, quote, "So if Braun, and he deserves no title, and I will give him none, misunderstood the question, I would very much like to know what question he thought he had been asked. Since he answered so confidently, surely he knows what he thought he heard. He should share that with us so we can all understand his true intention. Though I imagine it will take his entire staff and a whole damned lot of creative imagination to reverse engineer that one, especially since his ultimate point delivers the same result. States deciding which inalienable rights to uphold and which to disregard, and for whom." End quote. But, quote, Braun admitted there are many Supreme Court decisions he believes improperly established federal rights that would be better handled on a state-by-state basis, including Loving v. Virginia that legalized interracial marriage, and Griswold v. Connecticut in 1965 establishing a right to privacy concerning contraceptive use. End quote. And that goes back to my initial point that this has been in the game plan all along. For full interview context, see the link in the show notes. This next clip, I have no words to describe it. As one comment noted, quote, "Fuentes is total sewage." End quote. I couldn't agree more.
You know what's good, though? I can see the conservative movement is slowly coming back around to its implicit racism of the old days. You know, like I remember when Obama was president, there definitely was some thinly veiled, racism there. And sort of a xenophobia. You Muslim socialist, you're born in Kenya, but conservatives would always say, no, it's not, Herman Cain is a real patriot, and hey, Clarence Thomas, but this Obama, he's different, And now that Ketanji Jackson Brown is a nominee, you're seeing conservatives are kind of coming, you're kind of getting a little taste of that again. And like I saw Charlie Kirk, for example, Charlie Kirk said, take a good long look at Ketanji Brown Jackson. This is what your country looks like on CRT. And a lot of liberals called them out for that, and they said, well, what exactly does that mean? What the hell does that even mean? And they're right. I mean, yeah, what does that mean? It means, she's black, and if you're a white guy and you dream of becoming a Supreme Court justice, you're going to have to clerk for someone named Ketanji Brown Jackson. And so Charlie Kirk was like, he was like this close to saying, look at that black face. look at her black face and her name. That's what your country's going to look like. And he was so close to just, it's like that. It's really like that close to saying something like that.
From what I have read concerning this man-child in question, he is all of 23 years old. Amazing. There are so many false claims concerning HR 6666, and yes, that's the correct bill number, aka the TRACE Act, Testing, Reaching, and Contacting Everyone Act. It's hard to keep up. The bill itself is from 2020, and contrary to popular opinion among the crazies, Bill Gates and George Soros had nothing to do with drafting said act. From my understanding, the TRACE Act does not specify a preference for any form of contract tracing and does not designate a role for the federal government in collecting data on people or using it for any means. The bill does give funding priority to groups that operate in low-income and minority communities. This is directly from the opening of the legislation in question. Quote, to authorize the Secretary of Health and Human Services to award grants to eligible entities to conduct diagnostic testing for COVID-19 and related activities such as contact tracing through mobile health units and, as necessary, at individuals' residences and for other purposes. End quote. It is the phrase "for other purposes" that have the nut jobs in a tizzy.
What do people need to understand in your estimation?
What we need to understand is that Congress is working on legislation called HR 6666. It's HR and then 4 sixes. That legislation, if that were passed, would make every single person on the planet, or at least in America, to take an RNA-modifying nanotechnology inside your body that has the capacity to control your thoughts. So everybody out there needs to make sure that all of your elected officials need to know, do not let HR 6666 pass, and do not take those RNA-modifying nanotechnologies inside your body. If you've already taken the shots inside your body and you have concerns, please go to timetofreeamerica.com and just come out to one of our events, because we have doctors, scientists, and people that know what's going on that are developing therapies and treatments that can help reverse some of the side effects of these quote-unquote gene therapy, RNA-modifying nanotechnology vaccines.
All right, Clay Clark, great to have you on the show. Thank you, sir.
Sadly, Clark's statement is just jam-packed with incorrect information. But the primary point I want to address is Clark's misunderstanding of the term nano. Quote, "The term nano is simply a unit of size, referring to science conducted at the nanoscale of about 1 to 100 nanometers. Similarly, the general definition of nanoparticle is a small particle that is between 1 and 100 nanometers in size. In context of mRNA vaccines, nanoparticle refers to a tiny lipid droplet that carries the vaccine component. Lipids are substances that are not soluble in water, like fats. These mRNA vaccines use a chemical messenger to instruct cells to make proteins that may mimic the outer surface of the new coronavirus, thereby creating immunity. The lipid nanoparticles are essentially delivery vehicles that protect the mRNA when the vaccine is injected and transported to the right places in the cell." End quote. So our last story deals with Elaine Gannon. And all I can ask is she really as clueless as she sounds? Quote, "I was seriously curious," end quote.
You're in the ladies' room and then you realize somebody else is in there doesn't have has a male body instead of a female's body. I mean, it just causes some issues there. No, it's you should let people go to the bathroom. Well, they probably don't realize. Yeah, exactly. That's because you have those long hair. That's been. Are you going to go through the procedure? You think we're going around forcing our genitalia in people's face? We're trying to go to the bathroom, and what you want to do is not let people do that. Your whole argument here is the fact that you don't want people to use bathrooms. A bathroom, no one is looking at what can. I was seriously just curious. On public record about genitals, and if people would see that, how would anyone know? We have been coming for 7 years trying to help people understand, and I know this is not a topic and it didn't make anything by it, but that's the point. Kids aren't going around exposing themselves. Kids wanting to play sports with their friends. That's what this bill is. And getting wrapped up in genitals in bathrooms gets us so far away from that, and it dehumanizes our children. My child is so much more than genitals. And that's what I need you to see. That's what every family who has come through year after year is begging you, demanding that you see. I don't know what their genitals are. I am not making an assumption, and I'm not willing to ask that question because it's highly inappropriate.
I believe the Human Rights Campaign sums it up well. Quote, "An incredibly inappropriate and invasive line of questioning about their body," end quote. So with that, I'm going to close out this episode for now. Fair warning, there may be a part 2 as well as a part 3, as I still have a shit ton of stories to go through. So we'll see. And with that, I bring you the Skeptic. Making atheism and skepticism more accessible to a wider audience. Enjoy and peace out.